Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining me on the BioBreakthroughs podcast. I'm your host, Jared Taylor. Joining me today is the president and CEO at Praxis Precision Medicines, Marcio Souza. How are you today?
Hey, Jared, how are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have you. Let's dive right in. Tell the audience a
Awesome.
little bit about yourself.
Yeah, maybe I'll talk a little bit about myself and Praxis, kind of intertwine. I think it's a cool way to start a conversation, right? So passionate about CNS drug development and use at the end of the day, helping patients. That's what attracted me to Praxis, having dealt with that like my entire life, actually. Like you see how much needs that is on brain disease in general, how little is being done on the last 2 decades or so, mostly because we don't really understand a lot what's going on. So when I first heard about Praxis, the work was being done, the ideas that came from our co-founder and CSO Steve, and got me really excited and really aligned on the mission at the end of the day, that is to bring these drugs to patients and keep doing it again and again until we're not needed anymore. I think that hopefully we're going to get that pretty soon.
What's Praxis's approach and how does your technology work today?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way we look into brain disease in general, right? So we can, like in many other conditions, I would say, unfortunately, to just go and access the tissue, right? You can just, in a normal course of helping someone with a brain condition, just open up their skull and get a piece of it and understand what's going on there. So we have to use surrogates, I would say, to what's going on. And one of the ideas that we had that proved to be quite successful is by looking into 1 degree of separation genetic disease and how they influence the brain networks. And then asking the question, if we do try to manipulate that, like positively manipulate that, would that have an impact for a broader population or for that specific genetic disease? So we call that inspired by genetics, but not necessarily just tied one by one with genetics. What allow us to do is to be quite open about the modality uh, and lot more merit to the biology. So understanding the process itself, uh, going there and trying to correct the process with a small molecule, with a biologic, with an ASO. At this point in time, we have 4 programs in the clinic. 3 of them are small molecules. 1 is an ASO. But for example, our next candidate is an ASO. So we don't actually choose a priori. We choose what is best for the condition, for the way we actually understood the biology to help patients.
And in your space, what do you see as still some of the major, I guess, blockers that you have to deal with on a daily basis, and maybe without going into too much, um, of the intricacies of the business, but how are you kind of combating those?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, there's still a lot of stigma about CNS brain disorders in general. It's mostly invisible to a lot of people. So when you're talking about, like, we have a number of programs in epilepsies, we have a program in essential tremor, there's a movement disorder, right? For the majority of the time, a patient is suffering from this condition is not on anyone else's eyes. So we're not talking about it, we're not seeing it, it's happening. They're suffering a lot from it, and the families and everyone around them, but the visibility is not quite there. So the awareness is still, I would say, could be improved significantly, despite the number of people being affected by those conditions directly and indirectly. I think the second is the measure, right? Because there's very little development, the way to measure the impacts has not developed as much as in other conditions. So when you're talking about, for example, tremor, is not the tremor the issue. The issue is how the tremor affect people's lives, right? Like having a tremor, and I'm not minimizing that whatsoever. I actually think it's super complex. But when you talk to patients, what they care about is they can't help their grandkids or their kids. They can't dress, they can't drink by themselves. So that aspect and how we considering current regulatory framework, transform that into endpoints. It's a very interesting challenge and one that we've been solving together with the patients, but definitely a challenge. On the epilepsy side, fortunately, I would say patients don't seize continuously for the most part. But unfortunately, it means that counting the seizures and seeing them, it's a little bit challenging as well, right? And showing to the world that the impact it has on the mortality of those conditions, on the early unfortunate mortality of those conditions. So those are the, I would say, higher level patient impact ones. But then you go earlier on the development, goes back to the brains is still unknown, right? We know a little bit about it, but there's a lot we don't know. And when you affect one thing, there are networks that got affected. So we take a network disease approach. We don't believe that it's just like you fix one protein, you fix one pathway, and everything is fine. No, we need to ask ourselves, what is the impact globally in the brain and health of patients? And that is still challenging on the day-to-day of the business.
What is the potential of both EMBOLD and EMBRAVE studies, and what do you think those could mean for patients?
Yeah. So those are two studies in developmental encephalopathy, right, or DEs, where we see patients not only having very severe seizure, but also having a huge impact on their life in general and development, right? Uh, there's a misconception that those patients are like not there in terms of their developmental. I actually tend to disagree with that. They are there, right? We just need to unlock the ability for them to be able to interact with the world. So, but it's both on developmental stop and on the seizures condition. We're taking two approaches for this disease. One is a very specific modification on the gene that in this case is defective with Praxis 222. We've been very successful on the first cohort of patients with those once a month injections. And what you're seeing is quite, I would say, unprecedented reduction in seizures, increasing the number of days they don't seize at all, which you can imagine as a parent, as a grandparent, as a family in general, just not having a seizure that day, how important it is. That program now going to be discussing with the FDA pretty soon how to move forward, how to truly bring this to patients for an approval in the near future. Knock on woods, that's going to be successful. For the other program you mentioned, the study is a little bit different because what we're trying to do with Praxis 562 is modify the disease for a broader number of Gs. So instead of specifically one, like 222, but looking to them more broadly. Obviously, completely different challenge, right? So those populations are heterogeneous. These patients are not exactly the same. We're incredibly excited because the preclinical data in genetic models really supports this approach. We're going to have data for that program in the first half of next year. So very excited to get to the milestone and be able to help these patients as well.
Looking at the year ahead, what do you see as the biggest opportunity for the company, and really what excites you and the team the most?
Yeah, it's hard not to be excited by any of the little pieces and or big ones that they were tackling. Right? When you think about the size of the impact in number of people, maybe that's the way I would measure right now. There is absolutely nothing that is effective for essential tremor. So it's easy to get excited about that from the good we can do to society. There's about 7 million patients in the US suffering from that. And it would be the first drug in 60 years or so that reached phase 3 and would potentially be approved. So incredibly excited. We're recruiting on this study right now. It's the largest ever conducted study in this disease. So we're not only going to understand the drug, we're going to have a lot of insights about the patients and how they live. Also taking a slightly different approach, or maybe a large different approach here. When we ask patients like what it will take for them to contribute more to their peers, one of the things became very clear is very hard for them to go to sites and to those are, in the case of essential tremor, slightly older patient population. So incredibly difficult to go through 5-6 hours of visits, 1 or 2 hours of like getting there from a transportation perspective, and working with a network of physicians that are experts on the fields. we designed a study that actually bring the experts to their home. So very not sure how innovative it truly is, but really patient conscious and disease conscious here, understanding what is the need versus trying to fix that into only one-sided need. So that is exciting on both approaches, right? Not putting a whatsoever in terms of the quality of the trial, minimizing that at all. It's actually to some extent increasing the quality of the trial, better acquisition of data, better monitoring in general, but really meeting the patient where the patient is. And then on the epilepsy conditions, right, we have 3 programs. We talked about 2 of them that are for pediatric patients, which I think as a society is very easy to get attached to it, right? We care about kids, we care about them having a healthy life for themselves, for the society, for their parents. But equally important are the adults living with this condition, like people like you and I, that really can't carry on with their lives as would like to, because they're having like that fear on the back of their mind they will have another seizure, they'll not be able to perform. And the current medications are quite toxic in terms of what affects the other parts of their brain and outside of the brain. So 628 is the drug that we believe is going to solve a lot of those problems. We have a readout coming up as well. So different types of excitement, but I would say excited across the board for, especially for a company our size with our ambition, really seeing everything maturing in 1 year is thrilling.
Well, I'm really excited for you and the team and to continue your growth, and we'll have to have you come back on to kind of share updates with us, or and maybe we can even ping you for like an article or something if we can't always link up on a podcast. But I would really love to hear um, someone in your life for the last question. It can be someone you've worked with, it could be a family
Mm-hmm.
member, someone that's impacted you the most in your career this far.
Oh gosh, yeah. I think everyone who impacted the most are a patients on some extent, right? I'll start with my son who has a CNS conditions. Like I was already working CNS when he was born, but it was the personal touch, and he's doing super well and so on. And I consider myself lucky and blessed every single day for that. Uh, and then when I joined Praxis, I had the great pleasure to meet and to really see the people impacted throughout therapies throughout my career. Uh, but it became a lot more real when I came here, right? There are 2 individuals in the company that actually funded a biotech company to advance those programs. So it's a very unique situation, like taking matters on their own hands is Alex and Callie, and they speak about this publicly, and that's why I'm giving their names here as well. It was a very different type of emotion, which like professionals to the caliber that it's incredible, like just the level of energy they bring to a job professionally. Also a reminder of really the importance, right? When you get now someone every day that you respect as a professional, respect as a member of society, as a parent, they have to deal with a kids requiring a lot of attention and the fear behind that, transforming that into a motivation. And I think what I see in both of them was I'm not sure if I would have the strength they had. So giving me that in the days we all have our ups and downs, and the day that I'm a little bit down on the energy, they are my north in terms of like, yeah, that's why I'm doing this. It's not for myself, it's for people outside of the door.
I've really enjoyed hearing your story and the company, and I had to add that personal question
I
at the end. I
appreciate
always
it.
like those responses, and I'm glad to hear there's the with your child and the patients that you see those ties there. Thank you so much, Marcio, for joining me on the BioBreakthroughs podcast. And like I said, I'd love to have you come back on in the future.
Wonderful. Thanks. I really enjoyed the conversation as well, Jared.